I wanted people to understand that the world of restaurants, especially the world of restaurants in America, is much different in the 70s and 80s than they've become. I think we still have a purpose to blow people away. Our purpose is to take people out of the real world for 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day and put them into a world of what if.
Welcome to the first live, as in with an audience, episode of Pan Con Podcast. I am pleased that the result of nobody asking me whether there was a dress code is everything I dreamed it would be. There are caps, there are suits, there's, I think Larry's in a cuavera. This is all very exciting. We've never done this with an audience, although we had been talking about doing it with an audience since something like before COVID, before the world turned upside down, and now we're finally back here with me looking at Mike's Miami Against the World on his back. So this all feels very fitting.
Perfect.
So there are, for those of you who are in our listening audience, there are a little more than a dozen people here. Most of them past guests, but all of them somehow or another connected to our podcast. In fact, I want to say that the only person here, aside from Janet, who is here accompanying our interviewee, Norman, who's a multiple-time guest on the podcast, the only person who hasn't been a guest is Terence Reilly, over here in that Aganorsa cigars and the Aganorsa Leaf polo.
Mythical Terence.
Terence Reilly is with our cigar sponsor, Aganorsa Leaf, but Terence Reilly is really, Terence Reilly has had the most consistent presence through cigars and that hookup on our podcast. If not for Terence, this podcast might not still be around, because I don't know that Mike and I would sit across from each other without the effects of tobacco.
That's a fact.
For 2 years plus.
That's a fact.
So I'm just going to read through this list again for our listening audience. We are joined by Larry Carrino of Bressman Carrino PR, John Falco of Fire Pit Hospitality, and this might be the first time anyone has ever heard that company name. That's Lincoln's Beard, it's Strange Beast, it's Maxwell Brothers, where we maybe will be doing an event soon, hopefully, probably, maybe. So we're also, unfortunately, not joined by Danny Surfer. He is here in spirit, and you're all missing out on his yo-yo tricks.
That was going to be like an intermission, and we all missed out on that.
Nidal Barake of Glutonomy, our, I think, most recent guest that we recorded with. Matt Kuscher of Kush Hospitality, of course, with Pata Sucia Palooza coming up. We'll have to hope that he didn't bring a bag of chancletas to throw at people. Terence Reilly, we mentioned. Carolina Quijano of Exquisito Chocolates, Miami's only, or first or still only legit chocolate factory, and also the bearer of, I think maybe the best gifts we've gotten on this podcast so far. I think Mike, I don't know if you feel comfortable sliding anybody that way, but
they were delicious.
Those chocolates were pretty great. Otto Othman and Nedal Ahmad, co-founders of Pincho, formerly Pincho Factory, and if you ask another past guest, Seth Burger Beast Gonzalez, liars about their shared family tree. Seth is apparently a Pincho Factory birther who claims these two are not cousins.
What a jerk. I know.
David Verjano, who is the host of our sister podcast, I guess is a fair way to refer to it, Step Into the Sandbox. He's a partner at Beyond the Agency, which did all kinds of work with John Falco and his places. And then we're waiting on Josh Pascuale of Josh's Premium Meats, who sells people nice meat. At some point, just to give you all a heads up, I don't need to give anybody a primer on what's going on in Cuba and around the Cuba subject. I'm expecting that Rosa María Payá, who has also been a guest on this podcast, will sort of pop in, and we're going to in very Pan Con Podcast fashion, awkwardly stop everything to give her about 5 minutes to address us. I have no idea what she wants to say, but I'm sure whatever it is worth stopping everything for. So with that, Mike, that is the longest. Oh, by the way, Petey the dog is here. And last but certainly not least, although I'll always put Petey the dog first, a lot of you are meeting Carlos Carluba Rodriguez for the first time. And if you had met him before, you wouldn't recognize him because he's lost a ton of weight, shaved a beard, and got a haircut.
Wearing a jacket.
There's a jacket involved. He's the best dressed person in the
is.
room. So Carlos is my partner in all
Life.
of this.
Thank you.
in all of this stuff, in DADE and Pancon Podcast and the Sandbox and the blind tasting stuff that actually, how many of you? At least a couple of you have been involved in. And I will leave the introduction to Norman to Mike because Mike, you're certainly going to do a better job. Oh, you might do a better job.
I don't think I'll do a better job at intros.
This is where I back away slowly.
Chef, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me here again.
Chef Norman Van Aken, my mentor, dear friend, someone that I've looked up to for a very, very long time. Thank you for coming on the podcast and then doing it in front of these great people that have also, for some reason, decided they want to do the podcast also. So I think because of this and kind of like the people in this room, there was a couple things that I wanted to talk about before we got into just like overall stuff. And there was one thing I addressed with my staff, I think it was about 2.5 weeks ago, and it was perspective and reflection on the last, 18 months of our lives, right? Me personally, I'm not great at that, and I think that maybe you can talk a little bit more as like someone who spent years in the industry, how it's kind of tough. It has been tough for me, and I sat the whole kitchen staff in this room and showed them a couple of videos of kind of our tastings and some of the things that we did over the last 18 months, and basically asked them all, what is your perspective when you look at this, and if you were given the chance to reflect on the last 18 months of your life, maybe not personally, but just professionally, like what would be the thing that kind of pops up first? I know for me, watching those videos, looking at the people in the room, I mean, when we reopened post-COVID, the kitchen staff was 5 people, 6 including me, and Chef Devin plus 1. So a very small team. And in that time, we did, very elaborate tastings, 10, 14 courses. We opened 7 days a week, and that was like a big sticking point for me that we were going to open 7 days a week. And even when things got very bad, because they did get very bad again, as I'm sure everyone in this room has felt, we pushed through it. And I heard some very interesting comments, and I heard some very interesting perspective. But the one thing that I don't think I heard at all was people giving them the opportunity to reflect on their own personal growth or like their own fight through everything, right? Forget about just dealing with like day-to-day food, day-to-day service, just from like the mental aspect of like the wear and tear of like how the world is essentially falling apart and you're still asked to go to work every day. So things I shared with them was I saw a ton of growth from a lot of people, personal, professional, and even I saw a lot of growth in myself. I still consider myself relatively young, and
Compared to me, you are.
yeah. But I think I grew up a ton in the last like year from a coaching perspective. Like being able to, I think, relinquish responsibility of certain things because as chefs we're like incredible micromanagers, and we want everything to be very good. We want everything to be the way that we think it's very good. And I started to kind of let go of certain things to give people the opportunity for themselves to grow. The reason why I mentioned that is because I feel like that's a lot of how my last stint working for you was. You know, you gave me an opportunity to kind of fail. You gave me an opportunity to grow. You gave me an opportunity to try different food. And then when I kind of came into this role 6 years ago, I don't know if I did a great job of doing that. So in the last year, I've made it a point to like, well, how do we collectively look at this and how do we collectively grow? What do you think it should be like? Not just me. How do you think the dish should be?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think the dish should be that way? How will it work for service?
Mm-hmm.
How will it work for the guest? Does it still represent who we are? And that's something that you told me a long time ago when I came up with, I don't know, I used to have a lot of energy. So 3 or 4 dishes that I presented to you and you were like, they're great, but they don't really represent what we do. So I think just your thought on perspective and reflection in the industry and what that really means to, I think, all of us. And a lot of people in this room, I think, could agree.
My battles have been more individual battles and personal battles and situational battles in regards to my successes and my failures. You know, I didn't have any idea what I was doing when I began to be a cook. I had been fired from a job roofing, and I thought that was a good fucking day until I realized that I had come up with rent real fast. And so I opened up a newspaper, the help wanted area of this newspaper. It wasn't an actual newspaper. It was kind of a place that you go on. You could buy a boat or you could buy a used car or, you know, whatever. That's called the Advertiser. And they had an ad for a short order cook, no experience necessary. I circled that thing, tied my hair back, stuck it underneath a sweater that I had from high school, applied for a job in a diner, and lo and behold, they hired me for $3 an hour. And I entered the world of the restaurants. I was aware of the world of restaurants because my mom was in the restaurant world and she loved it, but it was not a career. It was not anything anybody talked about in my life as far as this is, you know, be a chef. You could be on TV. You'd be like locked up and put in a wacky bin if people talked that way back in, you know, when I began. And yet there was something very appealing to being in the restaurant atmosphere that I loved. The smell of food, being able to eat food, being able to flirt with waitresses, being able to have a team, you know, be a part of a team, which we were. It was us kind of against them in the sense of not going down for the breakfast shift, not going down for the lunch shift. I started off as a breakfast cook. Then, you know, I still, even though I worked in another restaurant and another restaurant, another restaurant, it's just because I really didn't have skills in anything other than what I was doing. I did like it, but it was not a career. Nobody thought about that in that way. But then subsequently, I had been to Key West and fallen in love with Key West. And then I met my wife-to-be, Janet, in that very first restaurant I was a cook at. And I convinced her to come and live with me in Key West, which we did. And so circling back to the, you know, the ideas of the individual battles and the ups and downs. I'd never been to school. I've never gone to cooking school. And so my life was about learning how to survive on a hotline. I had made up my mind for some reason that this is what I was going to do. And I did it. And I continued to do it in expanding ways, eventually becoming the chef. But what's happened with all of you and you has never happened before. Not in all of the years that any of us are alive, even me. Not by far. Not since, you know, the Spanish flu, right? Not since that. So going back to around 1917, 1918, there's been nothing comparable to it. And our industry has been transformed without us giving it any permission. I'm on the 20th chapter of I don't know how many chapters. You're on chapter 4.
Right.
And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. I mean that this shit hit you with no playbook, no what do we do now, as it was hitting the rest of not the city, not the state, but the world. You all of you. It just blows my mind what you have had to go through to continue to dream your dream. I didn't have that. I didn't have that cataclysmic event while everybody I knew was also having that cataclysmic event. I had my personal cataclysmic events. You know, I've had restaurants fail. I've had so many amazing incidences that I wrote an entire memoir on that. And I wrote that memoir because I wanted people to understand that the world of restaurants, especially the world of restaurants in America, is much different in the 70s and 80s than they've become. I think we still have a purpose to blow people away. Our purpose is to take people out of the real world for 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day and put them into a world of what if. And so I've dedicated myself to that. But I've often thought in the last, 15, 18 months, what if this would have happened when Norman's, the restaurant in Coral Gables, my first real namesake restaurant, what if this would have happened to me and our team in 1999? The script would not be the script that we know, that I know. My life as I know it would not be my life as it would have been. And I wonder often about all of you and how this is going to transform you, and how this is your depression, this is your World War II, this is your World War I, this is your Vietnam in many ways. And I don't mean that to belittle those tragic events of consequence that were global, but for yourselves, this is, your life will be divided between then and after COVID. Your careers will be divided between that, and how you go about doing business, how you go about creating the atmosphere that you want for your staff, for your guests, for yourself, for your families. We've had a lot of opportunity here in the last number of months to really reflect and figure out what is important. And, my hat's off to all of you to have had to maintain as best you could your ideals, and yet know that there were times where you had to squeeze your food into a box and put it in a car and say goodbye to it, rather than have it sent over to a table on a tray from a beautiful heart from a person. For you all to transition from what you were doing 2 years ago to what we're doing during the pandemic, heartbreaking, but you've survived. We've all of us that have been fortunate enough to survive have survived it. The question is now, what are we going to do going forward? What is going to be the nature of the hospitality business going forward? It's going to be more thoughtful than it ever was. The people who were Americans during World War II or during the Depression, they were forever changed, right? It's human nature. As chefs and restaurant operators and winemakers and sommeliers and all of the components, all of the part of the people that go into making up the cast of characters that make restaurants possible, we all have a new landscape in front of us now, but we still have to come back to the original thing, which is to make people happy. And somehow create the environment for teams that they'll feel the magic of making people happy. It's for me, it's never been about money. I barely ever made money. We did get kind of successful. Then we got set back on our ass when I went back to Key West for a while. And then we crawled back out. But it's been about that human connection. And you, Michael, you so fundamentally get it. You're living it on a public stage more than most other people because you're broadcasting it in this podcast. You're allowing yourself to be in a open mic conversation with some of the most interesting people that we have in our community. You all, other people that are not here in this room today, the great thinkers and doers of our industry are taking part in this particular forum, and that's beautiful. I love listening to it, and I do listen to it on the podcast. Even when I can't listen to it live.
Shocking.
I was about to say that is a shocking thing. So I messed up a little bit, and I wanted to let everyone know. I didn't actually talk about the fact that we're eating. So because of how this would have impacted the conversation, I want to let everybody know Mike and Norman will not be having the meal you all are having. I don't know if they're going to be nibbling on something or what, but please do feel free to eat. And then also, this is another thing I didn't do and I didn't prepare Mike for. With each course, we're going to have sommelier Todd talk about the wines, and we'll have Mike do his massive table touch, explaining just give him a few words about the things they're eating.
I don't remember what we're eating.
Well, that's why you have a menu in front of you.
Okay, got it.
This is your place, no?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, okay, cool. So Todd, if you want to come over, tell the people about the things, and then when you're done here, and from here on out, just come out and we'll know when there's wine. It's Todd time.
Awesome.
It's Todd time.
Hi, everybody. So the wine you're having right now is Raventos. It's probably the most high-quality cava you can get. So it comes from Panedes. It's 45 minutes north of Barcelona. It's technically cava, but they're trying to create their own DO to where it would basically be a Panedes Raventos DO, so it's their own thing. This used to be covered by the ocean, so the entire soil when you walk through it is chalk and limestone, and you actually see fossilized oyster shells in it. The entire vineyard is biodynamic, so you can think organic, all natural, however you want to word it yourself, but really crisp, really clean. It's made the exact same way they make champagne, just with Spanish grapes, so enjoy.
And Mike, before you do your giant table touch, I want to know this by the way is Josh Pascuale, who was able to join us, and because I was in and out earlier before we really got going, I had not seen Derek, and I as I was taking pictures, I saw him through the viewfinder of my camera.
What a
I realized
jerk!
I didn't introduce Derek Kaplan of Fireman Derek's Bake Shop. Yeah, so that's on me. Hello, Derek. Good to see you.
Just like Nick on all the nines. He's just crushing it, isn't he?
It's a complete disaster, this podcast.
Yeah.
And Mike, now you can do your giant table touch.
This is with the churro? Britt, yeah? Yes. Okay, cool. So we did a bay leaf churro. It's like a classic churro, just dusted with bay leaf and a little bit of sugar and salt. And it's topped with Osetra caviar and preserved lemon. This is how we start our daily tasting menu as well. The thought process with this dish was, I don't know if I've ever seen a caviar service that's a very Miami situation. And I thought that the best thing to do would be to serve it on a savory churro. So that's what we did.
Love it.
Cool.
Love that.
So just kind of doubling down on some of the things that you mentioned. The last year, and I think I've spoken to everyone in this room a lot, and I think the one thing that it's definitely pushed is everyone's creativity, and really showed what this community is really about. Because there's been plenty of opportunity to fold, and there's been plenty of opportunity to just kind of say, fuck it, like we're hoping that we're going to get aid one day or whatever. But I would say a lot of people in this room did the opposite. They said, fuck it, we're going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And as romantic and as great as that sounds, it's exhausting. And I know that for myself, and I know a lot of other people that I've spoken to, it takes a toll on you, you know. And apart from the fact that we go through the restaurant industry, which every day is tough, you know, I'm not one of those people that like gripes on like, well, restaurant industry is so hard. I mean, it's hard, but every job is hard in their own way. We chose what we do for a living. It is what it is. But this was something that no one was prepared for. This was something that, this was the hardest curveball I've ever seen in my life. As a part to opening Ariete in the first 2.5 to 3 years being fucking dreadful and difficult, this was on another level of just, so what do we do now? How do we still support the community? How do we still support ourselves? How do we keep people employed? How do we keep pushing along? And how do we not give up on the overall goal, right? Like everyone, I think, and everyone in this room definitely has different goals. But how do they not give up on their goal? And I think that to me is the one thing that I will say over the last year when I sat with my team and I said, you know, how do you reflect on the last year and a half or the last year, however you want to paint that picture? For me, that was the reflection that I did, which was, you know, we stayed true to who we were. We kept our goals. We wanted to do a thing. We did a thing. And I think I'm like dreadfully competitive, right? Like I'm competitive to a point that it's exhausting and sometimes not great. But how do we end up better on the other side than we were previously? And that was very tough, and it was very taxing on myself and my entire team. But I think we did that. And I think a lot of other people did that too, because not so often do you have an opportunity to close your restaurant and think about it from all angles again, rebuild it from the bottom up, from a business perspective, from a service perspective, from execution perspective. Like you need to be smarter all the way around. And, you know, I think the people that are smart really did that. And I think that some of them ended up better on the other side. The only time you would actually understand that is if you were to sit and reflect on it. And, you know me, I'm not good at reflection. So it was an interesting time. And I think that when I say we, I say like the community overall have done a super fucking bang up job of just like bouncing back 100%. Also, we're like in a very interesting environment because we're in Florida. So like we were able to open up sooner than a lot of other places. I just took a trip to Philly, which was like still working themselves out. They didn't really know what was happening. Like I went to go eat at Vetri, and Vetri was like, yeah, we were just able to reopen like 2 weeks ago. Like, I was like, that's wild. You know, that's, I don't know, we've been open for like 8 months, you know, not maybe longer now, I think. So I could only imagine if a lot of us were not able to reopen our dining rooms or reopen what we do for a full 16 months, like what effect that would really have on the community overall. So I think as a country, like the whole F&B world is still kind of reeling and figuring things out. I think Florida definitely had like we were able to make a comeback sooner, but it still was a trying time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like happening so fast that it's hard to compare notes with what's going on in the other communities. I mean, I can only imagine, you know, what's Portland going through, what's Chicago going through. I mean, I've still got many close friends in Chicago, and I know enough about that. But yeah, Florida was able to come back, you know, much more quickly. Not that it's back; it's not back yet. And I know that so many of you are struggling with the greatest issue of staffing. I mean, how many of you right now are here and going, fuck, I really rather be back. Yeah, I should be back at the restaurant right now because somebody called out. I know there's some people that aren't here because they had that last minute, so-and-so got sick and so-and-so went missing or whatever. It's just, now I think back to my biggest struggle for that period of time was when I was at the Betsy Ross Hotel, 1992, at the restaurant Amano, and South Beach was still just a Wild West show. It just was starting to rehatch at that point from what it was like in the 50s and 60s. I had come out of Key West, and I was super like, I want this menu and it's going to have like everything on it I want to have on it. And I was so possessed with that. But then it'd be like, but 3 people aren't here today. How are you going to make that happen? Somebody didn't want to come in because it's New Year's Eve and so-and-so got sick or wasn't really sick, but they're not here. So, I dealt with it in my own way, in that personal way again. Not like, you can't call up one of these folks and say, hey, I'm in the weeds. You got anybody over there? Because they don't.
Right.
Right now they don't.
Staffing is something I think I've also talked to all these people individually about. I have lots of feelings about staffing. I think that pre-COVID, it was difficult to staff. I think post-COVID, it's like impossible to staff. I just feel like so there was a peak, right? I would say 10, 12, 15 years ago of people wanting to do this for a living, right? It's the Food Network kind of...
The mythology of it. Yeah.
Right. Like, everyone's, this real lavish lifestyle and it's very cool and whatever. And then they got to they have to clean a fryer for the first time. And they're like, what? This wasn't on TV. Like, yeah, no, this is not on TV. This is the part of TV they don't show you. It's the same thing of being an owner, right? Like the owner's got it all. Like he's totally set up. This guy's got it all figured out. Like, okay. So like, there's so many things that people don't see. Like, okay, so the pump for the bathroom broke and you have to make it through brunch. You have to figure it the fuck out. So a line cook's not going to figure that out. The owner's going to figure it out if it's, people like us, small individual independent restaurant owners. It's this misconception. And I feel like a big part of the restaurant world, chef world has changed a lot because people got the fucking memo that this is not easy. Like, it's just like, again, it goes back to that time that, again, clean the fryer. What does that mean? You have to scrub the floor. What does that mean? You have to clean your station. You have to label. When you label things, you have to cut tape. What do you mean you have to cut the tape? Like, yeah, you need to cut the tape. I don't know. It's just I think the romance is now over. And I think that's also one thing, especially the fact that everyone had 18 months off and everyone found they want to knit or they want to make hats or they want to, whatever it is, they want to sell, they want to start an Etsy store. Like, it doesn't matter. There's so many ways that we could slice this. And the reason why staffing has changed so much, but, and also people can work for Uber Eats. People can work for Uber and and it's a lot easier job than, again, cleaning the fryer.
Wall Street Journal article today had to do with people in the industry who have left it and are coming back to it. And they did a couple of case studies, young lady who was a bartender in Atlanta for the last 14 years. And she said it was like waking up from a long dream and realizing that I don't want to be in that industry anymore because I didn't have any other life. I was so committed to, following the battle, if you will, being in the battle, that and so she got a job working where she's working basically Monday through Friday, and that's what she wants to do. And there were others. There was a young man who was cook, and he became somehow or another worked his way to become a banker, and he cleaned up and put his sport coat on and all that shit. I don't know. I mean, to me, I know for me, Norman Van Aken, I'm going to open up. I don't care if it's a Polydar. I'm opening up because I don't know how to be happy unless I can make food.
Right. But I also feel like on the other side of that coin, there's a lot of people that figured out this wasn't for them, but then there's other people that figured out this was for them. And that...
The business.
Right. Mm-hmm. The industry.
It's a clarifying situation.
As a whole. Like, I don't know if... For me personally, I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else other than being in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Some people have said there's going to be a shakeout and it needed to happen.
Right. Yeah. I do feel like the industry will get reset, and I think that's necessary, and I think that's totally fine. And I think
just hopefully not all, the Bennigans of the world being what's left. Hopefully the freestanding, the independents are
Bennigans, huh? Bennigans, that's good.
I just came to my mind.
Yeah. Well, But if you look at it, I feel like there's shockingly a lot of smart people in this room. And I think a lot of people have been a part of that change. You know, like we wanted people to feel more valued at their job. We wanted people to feel like this wasn't just a job, it was a career. Right. I know for me personally, was a huge thing for me. I want to find people that really love this and they want to do this for a long time, because I think that's what it takes for execution at a certain level. I think that's what it takes. I think I didn't leave a job to go work for you because I thought I was going to make a ton of money.
Good point.
Yeah. I left a job to go work for you because I thought it was going to be great for my career, and I thought I was going to push myself to a place that I had never previously been, and that's what happened. And equally so, I did that several times in my career, and I thought it was all important. I think people who really want to do this long term, they will do that. They will push themselves. They will look for the style of food that they want to do, and someone that's doing interesting things, that's pushing the envelope, or an operator that's operating at a high level that they want to learn more about and how it's done. I think now is the time that we're going to see more of that. Yeah, is there not the volume of workers that we had before? Sure, but I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that, and I think with time things will settle themselves out, and I think it's up to a lot of people here to figure it out in the meantime.
Big time, yeah. I'm amazed when I see some of the, for lack of a better term, the resumes, of young people that where their life has been, what their arc of life has been, and the places they've worked in, and the places that I'm familiar with, and they've been here and they've been there and they've dedicated themselves. They have put their life second to the places that they felt like this is where I'm going to be able to go and get the topping off knowledge that I need right now. Because for myself, I never worked any place famous. I worked places that were just neighborhood places. I mean, that was not in my path. But luckily for me, I guess, I've always been a reader. And so what I didn't know about the outside world, I brought into my own world through books. So I cooked and I read.
I mean, the first time I worked for something famous was yours. And I remember it was like, what's that, orientation day? And you were like, the New York Times said that there's 3 big openings in South Florida, and this was the first one. I'm like, fuck me. Okay. I was like, all right, I guess we're going to have to show up early every day.
Then you'll be late.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was supposed to be at work at 6 a.m., so I was never late. But yeah, I mean, those things, I mean, it depends where you're at in your own mental. Like, those things make a huge difference. And I think it set me up in my career to like realize that it didn't really matter what stage you were on. Every day was like a big day. Like there's not just like dinners that are big. It's like every service is a big day, and you need to perform at a high level like every single day. And I think that first experience working for you was that. The second one, working for you, was more involved from the food side, and I think that taught me like a whole other thing, but just expectations like that first, yeah, I mean, the New York Times said this. I'm like, okay, all right. So just even me, that I was just a prep cook at that time, was like, all right, so this is what pressure feels like in this industry. Okay, so now we got to show up.
I woke up from a dream this morning where I was cooking. Probably the 6th time this month where I was cooking in my dreams. It's still there. It still is that sense of urgency, that sense of where's my fucking mise en place? How am I supposed to get the French toast made if I don't have the foie gras delivered? Right?
Oh man,
it's we're hardwired to somehow make the play, catch the ball, hit the ball, whatever it is. We're all. I mean, I'm an old cook. I'm a cook. I became a chef but I'm still a cook in my mind.
I have 2 nightmares, like industry-involved nightmares in my life. One specifically has to do with the caramel for the foie gras dish that you just mentioned, because I used to fuck it up so much, and then I used to have to remake it so often that I would just
It's a hard sauce to make.
No, I know, but I would just I would toss it and I would clean the pot and I'd be like, all right, let me start again. No one would fucking notice. But why are there 6 quarts of cream that are missing? I'm just like, whatever. And then the other one is fixing the walk-in. Because I'm very specific about the walk-in and how it's supposed to look, and everything looks like a grocery store and whatever, and then turning around and then it's all fucked up again, and then now it's 8 levels higher and it falls on me, and then I wake up in the cold sweat, I'm like, fuck my life, I'm fucked. So that's cooking dreams for me are they're interesting because they always come from a place of fear. I always feel like fear is the biggest motivator, right? Fear of failure, that fear of not being ready for service, that fear of not executing the dish to the standard it's supposed to be executed at, that fear of not fulfilling an expectation. And that's something that, you hit on earlier, which was people join you for an X amount of time for a certain type of experience. And you want to... you want to execute. How about Todd? You want to do your thing? You want to do your wine thing? It's Todd time. Beep.
So the wine you're having now is from some friends of ours that are here in town. It's Bozo de Rey. It's Albarino. It comes from northwest Spain, just above Portugal. There's an old adage in wine pairings that if it grows together, it goes together. So these vines grow so close to the ocean that they kind of almost pick up a little bit of salinity from the ocean air, kind of like how an oyster is not salty, but it has some salinity to it. So hopefully with the dish, it's light enough to go with the fish, but it's also always has a little bit of tropical notes to it. So the lychee should tie into the flavors of the wine itself. Enjoy.
Thank you, Todd. So the Wahoo was local. It came in yesterday. And lychees were first of the season. We process them. We puree them. Then we make a consomme out of them through the centrifuge. It clarifies it. We add lime to it. Clarify that as well. Avocado, we were hoping to get first of the season avocados. We missed out by just a couple weeks. Compressed cucumber that's turned into this little cute roulade that you guys can all see, and the buttermilk espuma to add a little bit of creaminess on top of that Wahoo for that very kind of sweet acidic tone that you get from the consomme. So that is a Wahoo crudo.
I'm gonna jump in very quickly just because I figure this is as good a place as any for a commercial break, which none of you will experience, but this is where it will go. And I figure that in terms of the experience here, it's also a good time to acknowledge sponsors. This has created the illusion that Pan Con Podcast has much deeper pockets than it does.
Boom. Boom.
And we were only able to create that illusion thanks to some of our sponsors who we very subtly have highlighted behind Mike and Norman over here. This is the your first notice. When I put those up, I thought Mike is going to hate these logos.
Oh man, I do hate them, but it's fine. No, everyone's great.
Yeah, everyone's great. So many thanks to Aganorsa Leaf, who will have an ad here. So there's a whole thing happening. Also, thanks to Nidal, Aglutonomy, and the people at S.Pellegrino and Acqua Panna and Perrier. If you feel bubbles in your face today, it's thanks to them. Thanks to D'Artagnan, who contributed, and who also, Mike, you could speak more to what role they play in the menu, if any. But
so D'Artagnan I've worked with for a very long time, since I used to work with you, and
we're still working.
Yeah. D'Artagnan, I'd have to say, has the most consistent high-level product I've ever dealt with. We have their foie, we have our duck presses, their Rohan duck, their morel, we use their mushrooms, we use, I would say 80% of the proteins on our menu are all D'Artagnan. And it's really because, you know, there was times in my career that I would like, you know, let's test out another company, whatever. But it was from the consistency aspect. I could never get what I got from D'Artagnan. It's always consistent. It's always high level. It's always good. And their customer service, I would feel like I've had 3 reps in my career, and they've all been great.
All right, you got to slow down. They didn't pay.
I'm just saying. I forget about that. They're paid. That's still good. I mean, you know.
And
They didn't pay me personally either. I know what you're thinking. Fuck off. And I can see it. Huh? Oh,
yeah.
Kick Falco out, please.
And last but not
Todd,
least,
escort him out.
there's Courvoisier. So if you come out of here not in good shape to drive, it's thanks to the wine during dinner, but the Courvoisier before and after.
Use Lyft.
Well, yeah, you use Lyft and blame Courvoisier. So thanks to all of those people. Really, I think that this is a special experience, and it was because of all of those brands working with us. We're perpetually shocked that anybody listens to this thing, and we're even more shocked that anybody wants to associate their business with this podcast.
Shocking. It's incredibly shocking, but we're still here, guys. 100 episodes in. How many episodes do we have?
We're hovering around like in the mid-90s.
Oh, yeah? Mid-90s?
Somebody asked me.
Mid-90s were the best years, by the way.
Right. So, yeah.
Best years. At least for me.
Somebody asked me whether we had big plans for our 100th episode, and I told them probably not.
That would take a lot of organization and effort that I don't know if Nick is going to put in. Yeah, no. All right, so
Thank you.
I would guess something that I haven't asked you, and I know people have asked me, have you seen the Bourdain documentary?
It's not out to us here. Yeah.
No.
But so no, the answer is no. But I talked to Jeff Hauk, the writer from the Tampa Tribune for many years, but now is freelance and doing public relations. He called me today to ask me what I might say as far as personal memories, because he's going to be on this panel. They're going to watch the movie at this major theater in Tampa, historical theater, kind of probably like our Olympia theater. And then he's going to be on a panel with 3 or 4 other people. So he asked me my what I would say might surprise people in terms of my memories of Anthony Bourdain. Just by coincidence, I brought this book today for Mike because I thought, erroneously, that his favorite book that I had written is called My New World Cuisine. But when I brought this, I said, "Do you have this book?" He goes, "Yeah, that's my favorite book." I'm like,
I have
"Oh,
3 copies.
3 copies. Well,
Yeah,
good.
3 copies.
And now we'll have 4. So
Yeah.
then you can give. But the foreword by Anthony Bourdain, and so it's with a lot of gratitude that he and I were brought together through my editor Dan Halpern. Coincidentally, I met him before Dan introduced us together. When he first came out with Kitchen Confidential, he had the restaurant in Coral Gables, the Leal restaurant there, which was in walking distance of Norman's. And when the book came out, they did a book signing over there. Now, he had not been on television yet, and so there was no crowd, no line around the block kind of thing. And I walked in with 2 or 3 of the chefs from Norman's to the restaurant. It was mid-afternoon, and he was sitting at a table. His knees were about almost to the level of the table here. That lanky body that Tony showed us in his life. And I came up kind of like around the side of him like this, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, man, don't be pissed at me." And I'm like, "Pissed? Why?" He goes, because I cut down your friend Emerald in the book." I said, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "Are you mad?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm so mad I'm going to buy a case of books." And he goes, "You are?" I go, "Yeah, I'm going to buy them for my staff." I love the book. It's fantastic.
Hard not to love that book.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to have like what it takes to watch that documentary.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I've ever, like I don't get people that are quote unquote stars or whatever. I never get into that very much. But I think what he provided for our industry as a whole was so rare and the connection I felt for someone that I had never met. Just like I've read Kitchen Confidential several times, and a lot of his work, and I don't know, I just feel like, so I've talked to people that have seen it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. Maybe eventually I'll be ready to watch it. I just don't know if like right now I'm ready to watch it.
Well, I'm going to watch it. I feel like I need to watch it and see what they do, because it's going to be the biggest, most widely watched thing that he's done outside of his own shows. And I feel like I owe it as a responsibility to our friendship to watch it and then be able to decide whether or not I endorse it or don't endorse it. So I'm gonna watch it. Coincidentally, Wolfgang Puck's documentary just came out. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
On Disney Plus? It's a whole different thing altogether. Interesting, and I think it's done well. And then our dear friend Charlie Trotter, his documentary will be coming out in probably December, called Love Charlie, and the woman who is the director producer of that, Rebecca Halpern, I worked with. I mean, I spent a whole lot of time during the shutdown finding the letters and the papers and the menus and the photographs that they needed for the documentary. I think it's really a good thing that these documentaries are coming out, because I think Charlie, if it had come out by himself, I don't know that it would get the attention that it deserves. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but just because people are a little bit distracted by the world. And so by having Tony Bourdain, Wolfgang Puck, and Charlie Trotter's documentaries come out, I think it's going to bode better for Charlie's reception in terms of at least people watching the documentary. I've seen that private screening.
How was it?
Emotional for me.
Yeah.
I think it was done extremely well, and I'm glad to say the family gave it its backing too.
Well, that's good. I think that's a part of the, so I never met Anthony Bourdain. I was obviously just like a huge fan and read a lot of the things, and I think it influenced a lot of the way that I am, like it just no fucks given, be who you are, and if people don't like it, fuck them kind of thing. I love that, and I'm all for that, and I think that
Which is a shock to the audience,
I know. Yeah, super shocking. But I think that taking that on and wanting to and being proud of that being who I am, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he felt so okay with it and then still went through what he went through, internally, because people don't really know what people go through internally, right? And I think that's a big thing in our entire industry is that chefs in all facets across the board, doesn't matter what you're the chef of, they carry a certain type of air about them, and in reality you have no idea what that person is going through, right?
Sure. Case in point, Charlie, Tony, I mean, Emerald, not that Emerald has any, anything that has, he hasn't died like Tony and Charlie. But Emerald is a person too. I mean, and he's had his ups and downs and his lonenesses and his celebrations and all of that. I mean, who doesn't? Mm. I mean, there is this mythology that we co-create for the clientele that makes them believe that everything is just sunny side up and wonderful all the time in the restaurant world. And that's what we kind of owe them. That's what they're paying for. Theater business is a similar business, right? But people are people, and we in the business experience loss, confusion, heartache, financial failures. We experience all of those things. We do, and if we don't, I don't know how we're alive, because we're risk takers. We're gonna take risks. If somebody says to you, "Hey, Mike, you want to do this crazy fakakta idea, and it somehow touches some part of your heart," are you gonna say, "No, I don't feel like I want to take that chance"? Are you gonna say no? Maybe
Probably
not.
Yeah, probably
not. And that's been our story, and from short order cook, flipping pancakes, to having a restaurant that it's won beard awards, stuff like that. Why do you do it? Because we're put on this earth for a reason, and you just can't quit. You just can't, throw in the side towel and go, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. And I don't think I could, I just don't think so.
I feel like there's not many industries that, I say we collectively, restaurant people in general, are judged from top to bottom every day. We're on a main stage because social media has created a main stage every second of every day. And, I think, as I've told my staff several times, it's impossible to fucking please everybody. It's just not it's not a viable thing. You just have to believe in what you're doing, the food that you're serving, the service you're providing, the cocktails and wine that you're providing. You have to believe in those things, be educated on those things, and if people don't get it, then they don't get it. It's not going to be for everybody, especially if you're, if you're trying to change the game. How did everyone love Norman's when you first opened Norman's?
No, of course not. And when I started in Louis' backyard and I did that, that was, they were like, why am I spending, X amount of dollars, when this guy's making plantains and black beans,
Right.
They didn't quite get the fact that just because those ingredients were humble doesn't mean that our efforts were humble.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned plantains and black beans, because often, right, people ask me, doing Cuban influenced food, right?
Sure.
Why would you charge X, Y, and Z? And my response always immediately is, because this is, if my country was allowed to progress 60 years ago, who knows if this is where it would be, right? If we were allowed to be who we were and push the envelope to a different level, then the sky was the limit, and we weren't allowed to do that.
Right.
So I've gotten that question several times, and at the end of the day, I tell them I don't give a fuck, to be honest. I still do what I do, and I charge what I charge, and I think that's partly maybe why people like me, which I'd be shocked by. But you never know.
I gotta say, Mike, I don't know what happened in the 2 seconds that I was in that stairwell that
Right.
you super podcast pro transition to what if Cuba were something else. This is
I didn't even mean
impressive.
that. I didn't even,
gotta tell
and then
you-
you show up. This is amazing.
I'm very impressed with what you just did.
Let me tell you that wasn't fucking planned at all, and that was just very serendipitous.
No, you got both gold teeth in today.
Poof. No, just one.
So I warned you all this would be happening. We're gonna slam the brakes on everything.
Super awkward.
So that special super awkward guest Rosa María Payá can I don't know what the plan is. I have no idea what's happening.
I was hoping you'd tell me.
Oh no! You've done this podcast. You know how ridiculous this is. So Rosa María Payá, for those of you who perhaps are not familiar or not among the 22 people who listen to this podcast, is the founder of Courvoisier. She is, God, I don't even know where to begin, but we did, I think, what was maybe certainly one of our favorite,
Yeah.
and a lot of our audience's favorite episodes of this podcast. And it was also, I think, the most illuminating. I think one of the things that Mike and I are proudest of is that, in a way, a lot of the people in this room are pawns in our sick game to lure people in with food and beer just so that we can drown them in Cuba. when they least expect it.
That's pretty accurate.
And one of the episodes that we drowned them in Cuba was when we were joined by Rosa María Payá, who is, I think it's rare that you look to somebody who is younger than you and you think, like, there goes a hero, you know. And the daughter of a hero, like, this is a heroic lineage, and we're in a moment in time now in the world that this is, I think we're all privileged, you know, that you're here at all.
I'm shocked.
And this will be, I'm not going to say that what you have to say is more valuable than what Norman has to say. It's 100% more valuable than whatever Mike is talking about.
That's accurate. That's for sure.
So I'm just going to let go of the microphone and let you do whatever you want with it.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you all for being that kind of punks. I think that you are giving me a lot of credit. I think that the real credit right now is in Cuba, in the streets of Cuba, in that big amount of people, that probably hundreds of thousands of Cubans that are in the streets, that were in the streets still since Sunday, and that today are being repressed in the most cruel and violent way that we can even imagine. When we I have to say, when we fantasize about this day coming, there was always this feeling that no, the Cuban military is not going to crack down against their own people. They're not going to do it. Well, they are doing it. And they are doing it in a very violent, in a very cruel way. There are kids that are dead right now. They are a lot of young people and not so young people. I have a lot of friends missing right now, a lot of friends detained, a lot of friends facing criminal charges. All this is taking place in Cuba, and at the same time, on Sunday we had the best news I have had in my whole life, and that news was the Cuban people is in the streets demanding freedom, demanding the end of the dictatorship. That people need support. That people need all of us to elevate their voices. Their voices are very clear. They are asking for the end of the dictatorship. We just need to elevate that message and to make those that have the power to help them with concrete actions to take that action. That kind of pressure has to come from us, and that's the depth that we have with those heroes. Thank you, Nick.
So, and I might pass the microphone back to you because you might have other things to say on this subject, but earlier today, sort of on a whim, Mike and I were in touch with Carmen, who is one of the staffers or volunteers or whatever the appropriate thing might be with Cuba Decide. One of the things that Cuba Decide does is to maintain the cell phone plans of a vast network of people in Cuba who are doing everything from coordinating each other to informing people in the outside world off of the island about what is going on in Cuba. And to my knowledge, and I don't think that this is a secret, but it's always a struggle to fund all of those cell phones. And so, you know, this is a thing that Mike and I have talked about for a long time, and I think that we finally are in a window where there's enough interest to fund that. And so we went ahead and we got in touch with Carmen and said, if we told people to send money to keep those cell phones functioning, where should they send it? And it was a Venmo thing, and it was the Ariete Hospitality Group. Shout out to new Cuban hero Andrew Falsetto and whoever else you want to shout out, Mike Beltran. We'll be matching contributions to that fund up to $5,000. And that's a thing that everybody here, you know, can contribute to in some way, shape, or form. If you go on Instagram, you'll find the information about that in our posts and in our stories. But I just want to hand the microphone back to you if there's something that you would want people here to take back home about how might I contribute, what should I have in mind about what to do in my position?
Yes, thank you again, Nick. I think that the most important thing is to spread the voice. I mean, the people, woke up on Sunday with the news that the Cuban people was protesting in the streets in a massive way, in a transversal way. At least 45 towns and cities were protesting on Sunday, and we're talking about all the major cities. We are talking about that moment that we have been trying to provoke for so many years. Now that moment is taking place. What do we need? We need everybody to realize that the real problem, the real conflict, because there are a lot of noise also coming from the dictatorship, coming from the propaganda of the dictatorship, coming from all the partisan positions. We need to focus on the Cuban people and to listen to what the Cuban people is asking for. And the Cuban people is asking for freedom. They are asking for the end of the dictatorship, not the end of the embargo, the end of the dictatorship. That's the conversation that we want to have. That's the conversation that we want you to repeat and to provoke in your social media, in your social networks, with your friends, with the people that you know that can make something. Of course, this is a very hard struggle. We're talking about families. Tens of thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, but families, citizens, armed, peaceful citizens, confronting an state with all the resources of an state and a criminal state, and a state that has the weapons and that is using that weapons against Cubans. So, of course, resources are necessary, but also political will is necessary. There is something that we have seen once and again taking place in Venezuela, and it's brave people in the streets fighting for recovering their own country and the world failing to them once and again. We cannot let that happen with Cuba. And Cuba could be also the hope for Venezuela, for Nicaragua, and to be honest, for a pretty good part of Latin America. We need both arms. We need the Cuban people in the streets. They are ready. They are already doing their part. We also need the international community becoming the credible threat in the heads of those criminals that are using the weapons against the people, because those criminals are also very cowards. That's what they are. But they need to feel the pressure, and that pressure comes from Washington, comes from each democracy in Latin America, comes from the European Union, and it's not going to come if we do not demand it, if we do not claim for that, if we do not pressure them in order to move and to act now. This is day 4 of protests in Cuba. All that we have from the White House is that is so good. We stand in solidarity with the Cuban people demanding freedom. Okay, we got it. They are standing. Now we need them to act. And those actions are pressuring the repressors. How? They have a lot of sanctions that could be very targeted. We're not talking about sanctioning the state. We're talking about sanctioning the criminal motherfucker that said that the communists have to go to combat against the Cuban people, and quoting him. And that combat means that there are several kids' deaths today. That's what is taking place in the island. Well, we need actions. We need those sanctions. Magnitsky Act, global mechanisms of sanctions of the European Union, the Treaty of Rio of the member state of the OAS. You don't need to know all these things. You just need to demand action, and those actions are needed in an urgent way. So that seems that all those are things that you can help us to do right now.
We get out of the way. It seems like people are applauding me.
No one's applauding you.
Yeah,
That's totally. No one is applauding you. Trust me.
So you tell. I don't know what kind of a time crunch you're in. I know that we want to get on with this, but if there is a question or two or something, we can open the floor to that, or we can let you go about wherever it is that you have to go. I mean, you're of course welcome to stay, but I know there's a lot of things happening. So does anybody want to Is there a question? Is there a thing? Is there? This is a 3 whiskeys deep prompt.
Yeah. I mean, from a Venezuelan, you are on day 4. Venezuela's being in year 20 against Chavismo and Madurismo. What needs to be different in Cuba so it doesn't become another Venezuela where people are tired of fighting and just gave up and lost hope and just migrated to anywhere they could go?
I do think that the Venezuelan problem is a Cuban problem, and vice versa, by the way. But that vice versa is because now they are lifting sanctions from Venezuela, and that's a way of helping the Cuban regime. Because the Venezuelan oil goes to the Cuban regime, even the one that they import goes to the Cuban regime. The Castro regime, that have been the one infiltrated in Venezuela to begin with, that is actually the one that directs Maduro, and we have a lot of documentation of that fact. It's just a fact, a very sad one, but it's a fact. The Castro regime itself is a very old and a very rigid structure. Comparisons are just terrible. We didn't need to make any comparisons between the suffering of our two peoples, but the structure of government in Cuba is very different in the sense that first, we are not taking orders from any other country. The head of the octopus lives in Havana. Second, it's a very rigid, very well-defined pyramid, which is also very old. So hard scenes are easy to break. And what we know for a fact also is not easier. What we know for a fact also is that the Cuban regime haven't even been, they haven't been even under a half of a pressure that the dictatorship of Nicolás Maduro have been. We have to try because they could break easier. And if they break, well, it's easier to break Maduro, it's easier to break Evo Morales, it's easier to break Nicaragua. They are the actual head of the octopus. They are the actual head of the democratic instability in the country, and they are always, always, always trying to put the fight out. If it could be Venezuela, it could be the embargo, it could be the European Union. They are always trying to create a distraction and to create and to sell to the international community that the conflict is not the real conflict. The real conflict here is a people demanding their freedom against a criminal dictatorship. They, of course, know their weaknesses, so they prefer to fight in other lands. Well, let's bring the war over then, and let's try, because I think we have a very good chance. Fidel Castro is dead, Hugo Chavez is dead, Raúl Castro se está muriendo. And those sons and grandsons, well, they don't want to see their flying space restricted Havana, Caracas. And they don't want to see all their money around the world just cut. And they don't want to end in front of the Hague Court. They don't want that. So there's a lot of leverage that could be used and is not being used. Right? Thank you. And this is a moment to push those buttons. They are going to run. They're going to run away if we get those buttons pushed. Of course.
This might be an ignorant question, but is there someone leading the charge or leading the protest in Cuba right now that you would know the name of, or is that someone that happened organically, or?
It's very organic. It's very organic. It's not. This was not a surprise. I mean, from January to June 13, there have been more than 1,100 public protests in the streets of Cuba. All the conditions were created for the people to go into the streets. The real question is why it took us that long. Having said so, all the leaders of the Cuban opposition, all the known people from the Cuban civil society, they are either in jail or detained in their houses. Of course, they participated. Our network of promoters were participating, and the ones that are still out there are the ones that nobody knows, are the ones that are unknown for the military and for the Cuban state security. All the known faces are some of them facing charges right now. So yes, the answer is there is no one leader, at least no one that we know of.
So I'm sorry. If they actually make some progress, what would be the next step, or what? How do you see that coming about? Like, if they actually win this little small battle? What happens next? Do you know what you feel like you have an answer for it?
Yes, and first, it's not a small battle. It's a very hard one, and it's not a small battle just because if this battle results in a victory, then we have a transition process. That is why it's not small, because the result of this battle is the actual outcome that we have been fighting for 62 years. And there are some conditions that need to be complied in order to just take the next step. And those conditions could be set, let's say, by different methods. For instance, Cuba DADE is advocating for a plebiscite, just to ask the Cuban people if they want the communist regime imposed over them for 62 years, or they want free, fair, and multi-party elections. Because if they want free, fair, and multi-party elections, just as they are demanding on the streets, then the whole system have to change, and we go to a transition process, which is actually something that the world knows very well, and we need I don't know how to say Asamblea Constituyente, I'm so sorry.
Constitutional Assembly.
Thank you. And we need some temporal laws. All that is already written. That's a way to say it.
All that is already what? Written, right?
And what I'm trying to say is those laws have been written by the Cuban people in and out the island 20 years ago. We can revisit it. We can update the transition programs, but there is not a lot of place to improvise there, because we know what happened in Czech Republic, we know what happened in Spain, we know what happened in Chile, and there are some steps that needs to be taken in order to have finally free, fair, and multi-party elections. In the Cuban case, you need a complete change of system, because the Cuban constitution just do not allow that. Actually, you could end up killed if you just propose that. So I don't know if I'm explaining myself here. If I actually answer, but the bottom line is this is going to be, if this is successful, there is going to be some kind of negotiation with the criminals. That negotiation, if that negotiation is successful, that negotiation is for them to leave. Some conditions have to be, some preconditions are necessary in order for that to happen. The real thing is here, how are we going to create the pressure for them to have to accept those conditions?
Would you like the Miami community to get in boats and go to Cuba?
I think that Raúl Castro would love that, because part of what they are thinking is in blackmailing the Biden administration with another exodus.
Right.
And that happened in 1980, in 1994.
So the well-intentioned Miami community that thinks, I'd like to get in the boat and go, you would suggest that's not the best play?
Not right now, not with American laws, actually presidential decrees that actually prevent the Cubans from just going into Cuba without permission. No, that's not a good idea in this moment, I would love to go in boat and just arrive in Havana and be part of the protest. But what we know that could happen in this moment, when we still do not have that pressure for them to accept those conditions, is that they are going to leverage that to pressure the United States, and that's a national security issue.
You know, something that's and I'm just going to share this very quickly. This is not a question. This is just me sharing. I was born and raised in Brazil. I'm Middle Eastern Palestinian, and I lived in Palestine. And then out of all the places in the world, I moved to Hialeah, Florida. Don't ask me how.
Good for you.
So when I first moved to Hialeah, I got introduced to the Cuban community, and I learned Spanish. So anyway, as I was saying, I moved to Hialeah, Florida from Brazil and Palestine, and again, I'm just sharing my experience with you guys because growing up in Brazil, the idea of Cuba is a very different idea of what Cuba is. And then you go to Palestine, the idea of Cuba is a very different idea of what Cuba is. So when I first moved here, and I heard the stories firsthand from my dad's grocery store in Hialeah, I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. So what you said earlier, I just want to share that. Like, don't take for granted what sharing the story of what Cuba really is. Don't think everybody knows, because I'm telling you, I was born and raised in Brazil and I lived in the Middle East, and the story of what's actually happened in Cuba is not told anywhere else. So I know when I first moved, I was like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "No, but Raul, not Raul, but Che Guevara. You know the picture that everybody, you know, the iconic picture of Che, like that lives everywhere, right?" I remember Salt Bay. If you guys remember, he did
I remember that loser
and I
well.
looked at him, and then I was like, it's not that he's an ignorant. It's not that it's just the story's not told about Venezuela anywhere. The story's not told about Cuba everywhere. So it's super. Yeah,
Nailed it.
But I saw that, you know, for me, I was like, it's so important that you guys, the people that are Cuban, that are more close to us as a Miami community, to tell the story every time. Don't take it for granted. Like, some people don't know, and like, you have to share it, post it, talk about it, because like when you share it and I share it and he shares it and she shares it, it becomes more credible because it's true, but you're fighting against the propaganda, right? So I just wanted to share that because that happened to me when I first moved to Miami.
I read today that Russia, China, and Iran asked the U.S. not to get involved whatsoever, which I thought was really hypocritical. Yeah. And I know that you're asking us to share this story, but what kind of pressure do you think Miami, Florida, and any Cuban, you know, American has to put on the U.S. to do something that, I'm not asking to lift the embargo, but to add pressure in ways that can create change or put pressure on the regime that's taking place there?
Todd's really getting shafted around here. Huh?
I mean, yeah, it's fine. He'll be fine.
Nick, you can always offer us a drink.
No, you can always.
It's not my restaurant. It's not my restaurant.
These people need all the drinks.
And I'm asking, like, what can we do as Cuban Americans in Miami?
No, I know. It's good. It's a
Yeah,
good question.
It's a very good question. I think that the pressure comes from the obvious electoral approach. But that's a pressure over both parties. And I had a round table with Ron DeSantis yesterday and a round table with Debbie was on my show today. And we are asking the same thing to everybody. And we need then to feel that this is something that they owe the Cuban American community, and this is something that is going to be black and white for the Cuban American community. Having said so, there are very specific things that United States can do. For instance, United States has the capacity today of offering internet access to the whole island, overcoming the interference of the Cuban regime. It's about 30 million, I think. But there is an appropriation committee in the Congress that could make that happen. Actually, they sent much more money to other countries, and this is a very critical situation taking place right now. This is a very concrete, practical thing that is going to help a lot, that actually has the capacity to save life right now. But there are other more, let's say, more political things that the administration can do. There is something called the Global Magnitsky Act, which is a law that the Congress passed to be able to sanction individuals that have been involved in serious abuses of human rights in the world. Well, there are a lot of individuals right now in the Cuban regime commanding the troops against the Cuban people. Please act. But not just act. Invite the rest of the world to act. Something positive about a democratic administration is the fact that they have much more appealing in the rest of the world. Latin America is going to receive better the message that if we were in the previous administration. Well, give the message. Take your phone and start to call everybody from Chile to Canada and say, hey, I need you to be with me in this move, because the Cuban people need it and the Latin American people need it.
And I always see like my Venezuelan brothers, like, you know, friends that say, oh, they didn't do anything in Venezuela, don't expect anything here in Cuba. And it's like, I hate that. I hate that, like, you know, that has to be that way. We could change things, but it is frustrating to see.
It is. And if you ask me, there is political will to do so. I don't think that they are going to do it spontaneously. I mean, what I'm telling you is kind of basic. They already have the law. We're not asking for any extraordinary. Actually, why there are so many enterprises still making business with a regime that shut down people in the streets? Why they are not doing with Cuba what they did with South Africa? Why they are not implementing the Sullivan principles and putting consequence on that enterprises? All those things create the leverage that we need in order to build that credible threat that we need to create in the minds of those criminals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have informed the Rosa María team that we're going to be here pretty late. So I don't know what you're doing, but you're welcome to come back and check if we're still around. Okay. And we probably will be. So yeah, I don't know what to say other than thank you for stopping by. I can, in Miami of all places, there are a lot of people who would love for you to have stopped by, and this was an absolute privilege. It was the most pan con podcast thing that has happened in a very long time, to interrupt a conversation with Norman Van Aken for Rosa María Payá. Look at this! Look at this! Who knew?
That's pretty
Yeah.
I'm preaching sport. Victory.
Yeah.
If I were here in the middle of podcast, I'd be like, ask me this.
So anyway, thank you very much, and now I will awkwardly hand it over to Mike, and of course, Mike, you're welcome to say things.
Oh man, and we're back. You know, I think we're living in a very interesting world and a very interesting time, and we've been talking about that the whole time. But then to add kind of like South Florida's personal, just this like underlying thing of the relationship with Cuba, the relationship with, I mean, there's so many Cuban Americans in Miami, and what's happening currently is
Hopefully historic.
I mean, it is historic, even if it doesn't bear the fruit of the outcome that we all want.
Right. To be able to say we're no longer afraid is a very powerful statement.
I mean, the whole reason why there's been a lot of like conversations between Nick and I, how can we do more for this cause that for us obviously it has a lot of weight, and you know, we weren't really sure where to put our efforts, right? So the reason why we chose to basically raise money so people can charge their cell phones, that's essentially what we did, was
Freedom of the press in a new way.
right, is an effort to move the needle because the people now, I won't say are fearless, but they are showing more fearlessness than they ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And an opportunity for them to be that information like so many people here were asking for by just being able to use their phone, right? It's the first time that I've ever seen social media actually do something good. And it's an opportunity to assist in even a very minuscule way that we're just paying for people to charge their cell phones. That's essentially it.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
But that thing alone,
That's grassroots.
that part alone will make such a difference in the long run that it's incredible. I mean, even the opportunity to talk to your family in Miami, the opportunity to record something that is not supposed to be known to the world, because what's happening right now is what they've done for 60 years, which is shut down the rest of the world from knowing what's actually happening so that the rest of the world can just fucking forget, because they will just forget. It's easy to forget a small island 90 miles off the coast, you know? And that's how they keep their power, by lack of knowledge, by lack of awareness, you know? There are a lot of questions, like what Matt mentioned. What if something actually monumental happens? What happens next? It doesn't matter. We got to fucking get there first. And I think at that point, that's a better problem to have than what we have right now. And, you know, like, for me personally, growing up here, being born here, of Cuban descent, the only conversation I've wanted to keep alive is the fact that the real Cuban American culture, the real Cuban culture is not dead. It is still very much alive. And it's very much alive through the people that want it to never go away. And, you know, people talk about, like, Cuba's got such a high literacy rate. Of course, if you want them to believe the things that you want them to believe, you're going to want them to read the things that you want them to read. It's just like it's a simple fact. That's how you change a culture forever, right? Is by feeding them fake knowledge for 60 years. So I think part of, like, the reason why I'm always so incredibly jacked up at all times is because I feel like the purpose that we have and that I have is to show, if we were never to stop 60 years ago, where would we be? And I hope that where we would be is something like the restaurant that's sitting above us, you know, progressive, interesting, forward-thinking, zero fucks given, just be who you are and let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, for me, one of the things that I think reigns supreme, and I hope that's, like, one of the things, if I'm ever remembered for anything, I hope that's it.
What you'll be remembered for, among other things, Michael, will be your ability to transform the what it means to be a Cuban American chef, and bring forth food in a way that is not wrapped in the amber of history alone. What you're doing tonight with this menu, what you've been doing progressively with Ariete, has been to recast the story of what it means to cook Cuban food. And that's what I love about Ariete. And that was my fondest hope that you would take from working with me, would be that you would tell your story about what it means to be a cook, a chef in America in this particular time, in spite of COVID, yes, and all of the people that are here. I mean, I think that our mission is to truly represent where we live. If I lived in Hawaii, I'd cook it in a different way. If I lived in Colorado, I'd cook it in a different way. But here, living in Key West to Miami, my notion became, I was transformed from being a Midwesterner to being a South Floridian. And in the process, I had, I didn't have any ancestry in the deal. I mean, I didn't have a Cuban grandmother or a Dominican grandmother or grandfather. I didn't. But I just simply fell in love with the flavors. But for yourself, for yourself, you're doing it. I am mystified by those that live here and cook as if they didn't.
Yeah.
I am mystified by people who come here and operate restaurants and don't seem to ever visit Homestead and understand the farms or understand the fishing community that we have here. Why would you just always import everything that you can and deny the local farmers and fishermen and growers and artisanal food makers? Why would you do that? Just don't get it. I mean, is it so hard? Can you not be imaginative enough to take all your French learning or your Italian learning or your whatever learning, which is where I began my learning, but graft it onto the place that we live now and make it interesting. This is what so many of you are beginning to do in your generation that didn't happen before this.
Well, I mean, I find myself very fortunate working for two chefs that took it upon themselves to make that a point, right? It wasn't just like we're a farm-to-table restaurant, right? We've never used that term. I've never been a fan of that term. But essentially, when I started working for you, it was just a way of life. It was just like how we were taught to be. We were taught to, when there's tomatoes in season, we put tomatoes on the menu. When there's mamey in season, we put mamey on the menu. It's just essentially that those were just things that I was taught as a young cook, and I was like, this is just the way it is. And I think I've taken a lot of it's been a big point for me to teach my younger chefs that this is just the way that we are.
Do you have the seasonality chart hanging up in the kitchen?
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it more difficult here than other places? Sure. I guess kind of, but it depends on how you look at the product, right? Like using a mango isn't the same as using asparagus. Using jackfruit is not the same as using radishes. Or stone fruit, I guess you would say. But how you approach it will challenge your creativity and challenge really how you think about food. And I'm okay with that challenge, and I think that there's a lot of other people that are okay with that challenge also.
I'm glad where we live. We are in the most biodiverse place potentially in North America. We have greater ability to see, especially fruits and tubers here than anywhere else in North America. I learned a lot when I did the fruit poster project working with Larry Schachman at the Fairchild Tropical Gardens. I learned so much about our diversity and how unique it is because of the particular latitude that we're on. But people just have to get out of their comfort zone and go, all right. I mean, I was in a line I guess at Whole Foods the other day, and there was a woman who bought one thing. She had one thing, and it was nyame.
Oh yeah, nice.
And the checkout person had no idea what it was.
Right.
And it was not anywhere in their charts, but it was in the store, so it's not like she brought it in from the outside.
Right.
This thing looked medieval. It was like this piece of. It looked like, I wondered what kind of knife it was going to take to cut this thing up. And they had no way to figure out what to charge her for. And I'm like, it's nyame. And they're like, okay, what's the... And I'm on Googling and trying to find an English word for nyame for them while I'm standing in line. And this thing's coming up. And so they finally said, well, we'll just charge her for yuca. And I go, fine, that's good.
That's equal. I mean, I guess it's equal enough. I'm intrigued by So this book... The reason why it is my favorite book that you wrote is because, it breaks it down by country and like things that are normal in that country or whatever. And I think that the reason why I wore my original book out so much is because when you're not allowed to travel You know, like I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I didn't travel much, and I wasn't exposed to a ton of food other than the food that was in Miami. But my family wasn't like adventurous, I guess you would say. It shows you a lot of different Latin American and Caribbean culture through food. And for me, someone that didn't travel as much, I think why I gained such an affinity for food is because you travel through food. You learn so much about people through food. So when you wrote this book specifically, and the reason why I love this book so much is because there's a picture of Fan, right? It's on the Tres Leche page. Fan was our old butcher.
Fan's in 2 of my books.
Is he? Okay. He was our old butcher at Norman's. You know, that journey, what was that kind of like for you? Like, was there a lot of things you never messed with and that you had to, educate yourself, learn through other people?
This book was the greatest learning experience I had in writing a book. The book before this, New World Cuisine, was me riffing, me exploring in sort of an untraditional way. When I wrote this book, I decided to find out what the traditions were. And we began the process by, once I realized the significance of what this book was about from my editor, we interviewed the entire staff. And we almost like the census kind of interview, like, where are you from? Where are your parents from? Your grandparents from? Where do they intermarry? Okay, what are the dishes that they cooked? What are the dishes that they loved? And we began, a very, very organized process of trying to figure out what mattered for this book. And I had a map of everything from Florida through the Caribbean to South America, and it was a big map that was, like that size right there. That was over on a wall of my office, and I had to figure out, did we forget a country? Did we forget, an amazing dish from a country? And then there were certain countries where I realized I was way over representing that country and not representing, let's say, Ecuador or some other countries that were less well known. So this book, unlike the others, this book took me 4 years to write. And I remember getting about 2 years through it and thinking I was kind of done. And a gentleman from Venezuela said to me, "You've written a very good book on Caribbean food. Let's get to the rest of it." Come on, you're not done. And I'm like, holy shit, he's right. He was just a great mentor to me. Luis Zalamea, his name. Yeah, for this book, it was really me, and I think it took me further than, when I wrote Key West Kitchen, that was just like, that's where I lived. It was kind of an easy book to write, which I wrote while we were working together at Tuyo. When I wrote Feast of Sunlight, it was my first book. Anyway, we have an amazing place that we live in, and it needs more representation. And it needs people to appreciate our DNA. And her appearing today and talking to us about, the socio-political aspects of what's going on. It's not only about the food and cooking techniques, it's about the whole textural aspect, the cultural aspects of what it means to be a South Floridian.
You mentioned Feast of Sunlight. That's my second favorite book.
Wow.
Yeah, I just feel like the riffs in that book are like, for me, just because I'm incredibly I love old school ideology behind food, and I loved Feast of Sunlight. It's just like New World Kitchen, Feast of Sunlight second. It was just like, it's such a good book, Feast of Sunlight, and I've copied those parsnip. I think it was parsnip pancakes.
Parsnip pancakes. That is the progenitor to Down Island French toast.
I know. I'm well aware. I did plantain pancakes with torchon for a long time.
Plantains were the breakthrough for me. The first time I had plantains, Madura plantains, when I was 20 years old in a little cafe in Key West, I'm like, that's crack.
Yeah.
That just took me over to another place.
Todd, are you around? Where's Todd? Is Todd here?
Todd gave up.
Did he? Well, I mean, I just so I'll just give you guys the food breakdown of what you're eating. So we skipped a course, which is totally fine.
Gave it up? No, it's not coming?
No, we did it. You guys ate it, but
Okay.
just Rosa Maria was doing her thing, which is
download.
great. We're now on the duck masitas. Todd's here. Welcome, Todd. All right, Todd time. You're back, Todd. Tell us about the wine we're having with the duck masitas, please.
It is.
All right.
So the wine you're having right now is Pierre Clos. It's a Pinot Noir from Burgundy, France. Super classic with duck. A little bit of texture to it. A little bit of spice, a little bit of oak. It should have enough acidity because Pinot Noir is a little bit lighter to kind of cut through the richness of the dish, but still stand up to the richness of the duck itself. So, cheers.
So then, Todd, give up the microphone. The duck masita was kind of like a last minute addition. So it's duck confit that's lightly fried, tossed with sazon completa that we make in house. Underneath it is, so it's tamal en cazuela that I actually made for the first time for a family meal at Norman's. And chef enjoyed it very much, so he actually put it on the menu with shaved black truffle. And I think it was like beef shoe, shaved black truffle, and the tamal. We have it on our menu served with uni. This variation's with the crispy duck. This like red pepper jelly espuma, which is a weird idea I had late at night. And I thought it was delicious. So that was
like a espuma gastrique.
yeah, pretty much. So I think now that we're going to start going into the main course, we're going to start to slowly wind down into Q&As. But before we get into Q&As, for all these fine people here to ask you questions, I would like to kind of talk about a few small things that I think that a lot of people think are small, but I think that they're like huge, which is one, the work that you've done for South Florida, how important that really is. You know, people ask me all the time, like, so like, how did you get here? I'm not totally sure what here means, but when they ask me, how did you get here? The first thing I said was, I left a shit job to go work for a guy that this was the first book that I bought. And I wanted to learn everything that was in this book, but from you, and how important that was to kind of like our community as a whole. You know, South Florida food has taken so many, it's been an interesting ride, I think you would say, over the last like 40 years of South Florida food, right? We're still a very transient community. There's a lot of tourists. There's a lot of things. I think that's why we don't get taken as seriously as we should be taken. But you started I think you kind of put a flag in the ground and said, you know, South Florida is serious about food, right? And then thankfully there's been several people that have carried that flag on and have planted their own flags. People that have worked for you, people that have worked for other people. But essentially what you did was say that there is a community for food here, and we're kind of not to be fucked with. People don't take it that way. I think that when I go elsewhere, obviously because I'm very opinionated, people don't like what I have to say. But I think our food right now is as good as it is because of what you did when you opened up Louis' Backyard all the way to Norman's, right? And I think that trajectory has set us on this path that we are today, right? Forget about all the worldwide pandemics or, you know, crashes of 2008 or whatever it may be. You know, that laying that groundwork, that foundation, it's like what I tell my staff every day is like, when we open up a place, if we don't lay that foundation right from day one, we're fucked long term. And you laid the groundwork. And it was hard. I'm sure it was hard groundwork to lay, you know, and I think only you would know how hard it was, because Miami was just known as a tourist place.
Yeah, it was. It was. You know, Michael, I feel very blessed that I became a cook and then a chef in the time period that I did, because it was a very transitional period of time in America. New American cuisine was the term that was utilized probably for the first time around the late 70s and certainly through the 80s. There was no James Beard Foundation award situation yet. Certainly no Michelin Guide. There were magazines. And the magazines had come from really, you know, Holly Homemaker kind of magazines in the 50s and the 60s, the McCalls, and then the Bon Appetits and all of that, which they progressed too. But somewhere in the 70s, there was an awakening that was going on with what American food should be. It coincided with the bicentennial, 1976 being the bicentennial. I think Americans were beginning to feel like, what is our cuisine? And there were people who really were the earliest ones: Alice Waters and Chez Panisse, Wolfgang Puck at Spago, Jeremiah Tower joining Alice Waters at Chez Panisse,
Larry Forgione
in New York, Paul Prudhomme in New Orleans, Jasper White and Lydia Shire in Boston. They were example, and of course the American Southwestern food movement. These people were examples. These chefs were examples of things where they were giving specific understanding to a regional American cuisine. I was at Louis when this was really happening in Louis' backyard in Key West, and I was torn because I'd been out to wine country, and I was thinking, you know, that's beautiful out there. Maybe I should go to Napa. But something said, no, your obligation and your, you know, where you should do is you should give Florida expression. And so I very much, and it was a very specific day, and sitting on the after deck, which is the wooden deck bar that looks out of the Gulf of Mexico at Louis' backyard, where I saw a ship going over the horizon, where I had a really strong epiphanal moment. I was sitting there in the morning. It was a beautiful day. It was like around 10:30 in the morning, and I had espresso, and I had a stack of books, and I was thinking about what I was going to make for specials that night. And I saw that boat going over the horizon, and I was like, where are they going? Who are they? Who are those folks, and where are they going? And then it dawned on me that they're probably going to Cuba on that boat. And I let my mind drift about, and I'm like thinking, what would they eat there? And what do they, you know, what their experiences be? And it was at that point that I realized that it was time for me to stop cooking foods from all around the world, because when I first got to Louis, I was doing French and Middle Eastern and you name it. I was doing all kinds of things. And I closed up my books. I closed them up, pretty much put them in a box for about a year. And then I started to go to the little restaurants in Key West and sit down at the counters with like a reporter's notebook. And I would ask the cops and the waitresses and the cooks what they were cooking and what those words meant, what the translation of the words meant, what were these vegetables. There was a little fruit and vegetable stand in town I would go to, and there were little bodega grocery stores, and I would begin to like just purposefully make my menus reflective of where I lived, where I was living, which was Key West. And lo and behold, a woman who was vice president in charge of creative development comes down from New York, has dinner at Louis' backyard on a Friday, loves it so much. I didn't meet her. She comes back on Saturday, has dinner again. I didn't meet her. She writes me a letter, says, hey, Chef Norman Van Aken, we were at Louis' backyard about a month ago, and we had dinner at your restaurant. We loved it so much we came back the second night. I have 2 questions for you. Would you like to write a cookbook? And have you saved your recipes over the years? I was truthful about the first answer. I would like to write a cookbook. I had not saved my recipes over the years. But I said, sure as shit, lady, let's go. And that night I went home and there was a big kind of blot around my desk, and I began to write on this corner, and I finished on this corner all the dishes that were in my mind that I wanted to have up here. And that was really the template for Feast of Sunlight, the first book I wrote.
I love that book. Oh. It really, it's like, I have the, not hard, the...
You have the soft cover?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, fuck. I was looking for the hardcover today to bring you, but I couldn't find one. Charlie bought a case of them, and I bet he still has. Well, I bet his son has them. Anyway, I'll get you a copy.
Yeah. No, I love it because I bought it back when Amazon was selling like used books. I don't know if they still sell used.
Oh, they do.
They do.
Yeah.
And because the life of a prep cook, you don't have a lot of money, so I bought a used one, and it's still the same one.
Still soft cover though.
Soft cover.
I hate that cover.
it's great.
I'll get you one of the originals.
Got me through
somehow or another. I'll get you
a lot of long nights. So, all right, cool. So I guess for the interesting wind down for the next Q&A, Nick.
You ready for Q&A time?
I think it's. I mean, we're going into the main course.
It's that time about that time, huh?
We've had a lot of ups and downs and sideways throughout the whole thing.
Very typical of us.
Very typical of us.
So this is where we'll open it up. This is a brand new thing. This has never happened.
Never
There's
happened.
A situation for Q&A. So
I would never give this opportunity.
Not only has this never happened, but we are going to put a probably inadvisable amount of trust in our audience, and I'm just going to give the microphone to whoever asks for it. Larry.
I'll take it too.
Don Larry Carrino is asking for it first, and just pass it around. To whoever has things to say or ask, pass it around, and that's it. And by the way, introduce yourself for the benefit of
No, you got to introduce yourself the right way. Long Island Larry.
Long Island Larry.
That's how you're known.
Is it Larry Long Island?
For the 22 people that listen to this thing.
I do love my Long Islands.
Yeah,
it is the HOV lane to Happy
I can't call you Martini Larry because that's...
I love my martinis as well. I'm a multifaceted person. Don't box
that is
me
a
in.
very accurate statement.
But when you got to feel good fast, Long Island iced teas.
Okay, I guess
Enjoy your sipping bourbon. I'll feel better in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This is for Norman. Chef, how are you? I'm going to task your memory if you can oblige me. Can you recall from your years working or with Michael working for you, Michael's biggest kitchen fuck up? I have, as a publicist in trade, I've told any number of stories, not just about Michael, but chefs, and they regale us with fun stories like the time I made Thanksgiving and I forgot to turn the oven on and put the turkey in and blah, blah. And whether they are true or not, I mean, I'm a PR guy. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But in reality, could you recall perhaps Michael's maybe worst day or worst fuck up? Because I'd really love to hear it.
I'm going to say no.
And just so I understand,
the world would like to know.
Just so I understand, Mike, this is the guy that does your PR?
He is. Shockingly. We have a very interesting relationship. Shockingly.
The guy is supposed to do my team.
Yeah.
I would say this might be it then.
Yeah.
Going out guns blazing.
I see.
Michael never fucked up. Never. Only thing he ever fucked up was when he left me and went to work for somebody else.
Oh man. Yeah. No, I mean, I can definitely recall a couple of times that were detrimental to my mental health about fucking up. I think the first one was we're opening up 180, right? And the grill guy, both grill guys, so I was a prep guy in the morning. The lunch grill guy and the dinner grill guy both just no-showed, so I just stayed, right? So I was like on hour like 16, but no one on the chef team had noticed. They were just like, there's a body here cooking things. Cool, that's fine. So we had the wig burger. Remember that?
Of course.
We had the wig burger at nighttime, which was the idea. The original idea was that it was like a wig. You would change the toppings on it at all times. I didn't know that at the time. But
it was burger with ropa vieja.
Right. But Phil says the story differently. But he essentially someone sent the burger back, right? And I was fucking shaking in my boots because Norman was like literally, this is my station where Nidal is sitting, was where he was expediting, and I had only had like maybe 3 conversations with him before that. And they send the burger back, so I just grabbed the burger, put it on like a half sheet tray, and just popped the whole fucking thing in the oven. And I'm like, this will work. This totally makes fucking sense, but it doesn't. So we used to put like just as garnish for, I don't know if people ever actually ate it. There was a cornichon on the toothpick that went on the top. And I gave the burger back to him, replated, and he touched the cornichon on top. And he was like, who the fuck taught you to fucking warm up a pickle? And I was like, you're right. You're right. You're totally right. I totally fucked that up. Yeah, I'll do a new pickle. My bad. But that was one of the times. And I think there was several times, but I only shared 2. And then the second time was when we were at Tuyo. I don't remember I think it was like an event, and we were like setting up sandwiches for this like pass round. It was like a Cuban sandwich. Yeah, play on a Cuban sandwich thing. And he just walked by my station, continued walking, and then walked back, and then looked at my station, and I already was fucking shitting my pants because I was like, why did he make a U-turn back to my station? And is looking at all of my mise en place, and I'm like, I'm fucked. I don't know what the fuck is happening. And he just looks at me, and he points at the sandwich and says, would you serve this to your mother on Mother's Day? And I'm like, oh my God. I'll replate them all. I don't fucking know. Like, no, yes, I don't know. Whatever, I'll redo them. So those were my 2 biggest fuck ups. Larry, now you're fired. Go ahead. Who's next? Yeah. You're not fired, Larry. I take it back. Yeah.
Hi, Terence Reilly from Aganorsa. Forgive my voice. I just got back from Vegas, so it's not what it usually.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So what I've noticed, I'm 40 years old, and that's not old, or I'd like to think it's not old, but it's not exactly young. And when I was younger, I mean, I worked at a busboy at a restaurant, and I had different jobs, and like they weren't really sensitive. Like they would just like kind of, berate you and yell at you and like even beat you up sometimes. And now that when you're older, I notice the younger generation is not really attuned to that method. Do you have a different approach dealing with it?
Brittany Rothwell from the back says, preach.
Do you have a different approach dealing with younger people now? Because I find my experience, when I deal with people that are a lot younger than me, I have to take a different approach than certainly that was taken with me, which I don't have a problem with, and I liked, and I feel that I'm a better person for it. But it just seems that it's not an effective method today.
Me?
He's like, what method? He's like, are you sure?
Yeah, I come from a different generation for sure. I mean, I'm not a screamer, but pretty much had to put your food in the window, and we didn't really, we weren't touchy-feely folks. I mean, I remember feeling very bad for a woman who was working for us at Amana one night because
I know the story.
You know the story?
Yeah, I know the story.
She was so riven with the idea of being part of that team that she peed her pants, and the pee was coming right down her leg and right onto the line, and I was like, shit, Sally, you gotta go, man, go. I mean, for that, I was like, no, don't lose your whole soul over this whole thing. We're serious, but we're not crazy.
Depends. I mean, when I was like very young in the career and like I had my first management job, I remember I've always been like anxiety ridden. So I remember my chef, his name was Ramel Meza. He's still a very dear friend. He lives in New Orleans now. I worked with him for many years. And he just looked at me and goes, dude, it's just food. Take a deep breath. Ever since then, I've had like a very different outlook. I'm still anxiety ridden, and I'm still like a micromanager in a lot of ways. But I think because of the years that I played, team sports and so on and so forth, something that I've taken from that is everybody is motivated in a different way. Sure. And I think now more so than ever, right? Like, kids their motivations are very different. Like there's kids that are living for the day off, in a lot of other industries, it's like living for the weekend. And the one thing I tell my staff all the time is like, I don't expect other people to work like me. I don't ever want you to work like me. Like I want you to do what makes you happy. And that's tough because, standards and, the level we want to get to and how we want to move and how we want to progress, like it's tough for them to like consume that and be like on their day off, be like able to decompress if they really care about the thing. But, I try to promote it as much as possible. I do push people very hard. But it is definitely a different environment that we're working in than previously, There is no answer to that question, to be honest. There is very little. Like, what I see from the younger generation is they want to feel valued. I feel like I was fortunate enough to, as much as I got a lot of shit, I felt like I was very valued in my career. People valued my work. People valued the
sure,
ideas.
Because you worked the 16th hour.
Right. That's true. But I feel like people always treated me extremely well all throughout my career. So I can't, when people say like, well, I don't get this thing, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's like you said, facing anxiety issues.
Yeah.
Me too. But what I found in the restaurant world was that as much as I felt like out of place in normal society, if you will,
Fuck me.
I felt
true.
like I'm on a fucking team here. Working at the Pier House in 1979 with, the Rat Pack that I was involved with, and some of them were graduates of the CIA, some of the first graduates of the CIA. Those folks had an education. I did not, but what I lacked in education, I made up in, kind of sweat equity. And so while I didn't feel like a whole lot of normalcy about myself, let's say, I came from a pretty broken up family situation, but there in that kitchen, all those things dissolved, and I felt like, and then I would finish that shift. Yeah, we'd go out. We wouldn't get crazy shit faced, but we'd go out and we'd decompress and we'd have a number of beers, and then we'd get up the next day and we'd do it all over again. And that helped me go from being a nobody cook to being somebody that figured out a path forward to a kind of American success.
Well, I think you nailed it there, right? Like you're looking for the reason why the kitchen made so much sense to me was because I came from team sports. I was very lost.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, this is like another team sport. The only thing is you're playing a game every day.
Right.
And,
yeah.
You're trying to execute every day. And you're trying to be there for your teammates every day. And I think, to your question, Terence, like, I always find it pretty fascinating when there's people that are involved with team sports of any kind and how they act in a professional environment. I always find it that their approach is always a little different. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. Their approach is a little bit different. And I don't know why.
Do you feel the level of heart people have for the passion is the same? Like we're both, this question for both of you.
Oh, man, that is a loaded fucking additional question. Yeah, I mean, the passion and purpose is tough. You know, like, what is someone's passion? What is their purpose? I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if I totally knew what my purpose was up until just a few years ago.
But do you feel the desire to execute, to be successful, to achieve? Do you feel that that's the same for you as it is for people, you know, whether you're working with younger people or older people?
Well, I think, sorry to cut you off, Chef. I think that what you find as success is not exactly what the person working next to you finds as success. And I think that's the biggest issue. You know, like, for me, success was when I was younger and I was reading his books and looking around me, I was like, you know, this is what success is. And I think success changes over time, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now for me, success is sitting here with you succeeding.
No pressure.
Perfect segue to my question.
See?
Wait, the guy needs a microphone. Come on.
All right, cool.
Let's try to be like somewhat structured here.
Mike 1 2 3. Mike 1 2 3. All right, cool. So amazing. By the way, thank you guys first and foremost for having us. Absolutely amazing. It's such a cool place for us to be with and listening to you guys. But one thing that sort of fascinates me, and I kind of wanted to ask you, Chef, is I'm sure you meet many people that are extremely talented, right? The Michaels of the world. You meet hundreds of people, and some of them stick out. You as being a super experienced chef that has a lot of experience in the industry, do you notice the Michaels of the world as you're going through your life and say, this person most likely will be an amazing chef one day? And if so, what is it that you see in them that you're like, wow, you know, I mean, perseverance, tenacity, whatever that is. What is it that you as a chef matters to you when you see someone, an up and coming person working under you? They're like, this person, if they stick to their guns, most likely they will make it. Great question.
Yeah. Michael is definitely one of the superstars in let's say my mentorship. Long before Michael, I had the opportunity to mentor Charlie Trotter, and a handful, not a lot. Let's say a handful of people who I clearly could see that they were going to go places. And I think the combination really is a combination between drive and humility. It's an odd combination. It's a very confusing combination for the person who has it. Because how do you mix up drive and humility? Because in some senses you're looked at like an asshole if you don't have humility, and in some senses you're looked at like a pussy if you don't have drive. So it's that admixture between drive and humility that I would say are the drivers in whether or not they're going to rise above and be remembered. Really, that's what it is. Success is one thing. There are a lot of people who are successful. You know, they belong to the country club, they drive a fancy car, they have money in the bank, whatever. But are they going to be remembered? That's the other thing. That's what became important to me. It was somehow to have been on Earth and part of a culture in a way that what I did was going to be recalled later. Then you have a type of I wouldn't say immortality, but you'll have a little bit more than your 75 years on Earth.
That was a good question.
Yes.
Given all the changes that have happened in the industry, staffing, etc., what do you think needs to be done to create an environment to inspire people to walk into a restaurant for the first time and make this their career? What
To
do you
people
think
to
is
walk
gonna
in
inspire
as
the
a
next
staff
generation?
member or as
Yeah,
a guest?
as a staff member, particularly as a cook, what's going to inspire the next generation of people who would want to make this their career?
Well, never more so than now. You have got to be able to exhibit to them that you are creating a culture that includes them. People are burnt. I mean, look, when I see ads in the windows of the McDonald's of the world where they're like, they're going to pay for your cell phone or they're going to, help you with your college education. Like we've gone through a major change. There's a sea change that is occurring here, and I saw that today in one of the trays, QSR trade, that they're talking about money for childcare. Things that never were on the table before are on the table now. What did it take? It took a huge crisis. And, I would say that as Tony Bourdain would say, the overlords are going to have to share a little bit more. I don't think that the overlords exist here in this restaurant, in this restaurant group. But in regards to the vast superstructure of the restaurant world, which will have a trickle-down effect. When people understand that they're going to pay $5 more for a Big Mac than they did 5 years ago, they're not going to be shocked to shit to see that if they're going to get a beautiful piece of fish at Ariete, it might cost $35 versus $30, because they now are going to be conditioned by the larger drivers in the hospitality world, larger economic drivers.
I economically, I agree. I think that from our perspective as like small restaurant owners, operators, I think it's what differentiates you from everybody else. I think everyone's understaffed, but even proverbially before COVID, a person or two down to really execute what you want to execute on a certain level was always a reality. I think now it's like finding the people that really want to be a part of the thing, right? Like, you're not just providing a job and livelihood, you're providing a purpose. I know for me, I left college and I said that I wanted to just work in restaurants. The direction in which I went in changed, right? But it was eventually molded by the people that I worked for. Norman, those things influenced my career long term. And I think that, and it's not like, I hate it when people tell me it's like a fucking sales pitch, because it's not a sales pitch. In reality, it's who you are, right? It's like, what are you providing to that person, saying that this is going to create a livelihood for you long term? I'm not just giving you a job, I'm giving you a career, right? And I work specifically on the kitchen side, right? So when I talk to cooks, I'm like, what is your overall goal? What is it that makes you want to do this? Because it's not just a fucking paycheck. I've never worked for a paycheck in my life, and I never will forever. In reality, what I do is because this is what I really fucking love to do. Now, finding a person and saying, is this what you love to do? And then it's also equally for us saying, if this isn't what you love to do, then maybe this isn't the place for you to do it at.
Very no maybe in there.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's like, it's harder for us because we're accepting the fact that we're going to continue being 1, 2, 3 people down.
Right.
Instead of hiring this person because we just need a body.
Right.
And I think it's the interesting side of it, right? I don't know any other way to be, because if someone's just like, no, I just need money and I just need whatever, it's like, well, then you know what? This isn't the place for you. You should go work at McDonald's. That's going to pay for your fucking your cell phone bill and benefits at $11 an hour. That's essentially what you should go do. Or
but
go,
you'll still
or,
be doing that when you're 45 years old.
Right. Or go work at Chi. That gives you a $1,000 signing bonus, which I don't know the fuck that means.
Which place?
I don't know. Some shitty place. I have no idea. I'm just saying, I'm just giving you an example of like what differentiates people in this room to like the larger majority of like larger conglomerate restaurants that are just opening to open, as opposed to opening with a purpose. I think that's my diatribe on it.
Yeah, by the time that Michael came to work for us, we could show people definitely. Look, people came to work with me, let's say in the original, after Louis' Backyard at Norman's. They came in, they were entry-level line cooks. They were making whatever the pay was at that point in time in America, right? They were making this. But if they stuck with us, they could go from this strata right here, let's say it was $12 an hour, right? But work with me for 2 years, and you're going to go from $12 an hour to potentially $40,000 a year. And then if you stay with me another 4 years, you're going to go to $60,000 a year. What other industry allows you that scale? You're going to work in a factory, which is where I worked before I became a cook, and then a chef.
Mason jars.
Mason jars. Yeah. You're going to work. You're going to get your $6 an hour, then you're $6.35, and then you're $6.95, and then you're going to be, you're going to be 65 years old with nothing much more. What we didn't sell them but showed them was that if they were able to invest in themselves, work hard, they could actually go from making, kind of the usual rate of a person who was working any kind of blue-collar job in America to making something much more meaningful. You make more money. I mean, I was making more, by the time I was, 45 years old, I was making more money than many college professors. That's not bad, doing what I already love to do.
That's the beauty of the restaurant industry that a lot of people take for granted, is that even if you don't have a degree, you can start, and if you hustle and you work hard, you can actually become someone that makes 60, 70, 80, 90,000, 100 grand. I remember when I graduated from college, my dream was to make 50 grand and make my parents proud.
Yeah.
I went to college and I spent a shitload of money.
The servers at Norman's in Orlando, right? They come to work at 4 o'clock. They don't have to have a degree. They don't have a special set of tools. They're going to make $65,000 a year. They're going to go home at midnight. They're going to come at 4, leave at midnight, work 4 shifts a week. That doesn't suck.
No, that sounds pretty good. and that's a whole other different conversation between the front of the house and the back of the house. We don't have enough podcasts for that left.
That's true.
Who else has got another question?
John
Matt?
Falco from Fire Pet Hospitality.
Fire Pet? Is it Fire Pet? Fire Pet. The Courvoisier has touched.
Norman, I see that you brought your wife here. I'm just curious. Are you disrespected that Mike didn't have his corn rolls and his gold tooth in tonight?
Yeah.
That was John Falco from Fire
Was
Pet.
it a John Falco question?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
I want an answer.
Then why you? I have no idea what you said.
Yeah. I mean, no one. Neither does anyone else.
We wanted to know if you were disrespected that Mike didn't have corn rolls in his hair today for the podcast.
Mike has gone through lots of different looks.
Yeah, Mike has gone through lots of different looks.
When Mike came to work for me, he had a buzz cut and he weighed about 100 extra pounds or 60 extra pounds.
Yeah, no, probably like 100 extra pounds. But I also
he
did have.
He looked like a corn-fed football player from Iowa. He's like.
He was the MVP of his basketball.
Yeah, I was the eighth grade MVP
of basketball.
Yeah, 8th grade. I mean, I was 13.
Were you a guard?
No, it was different times.
You must have been a guard, right?
I was a point guard. I was the point guard of the team. I was the MVP of
8th grade MVP.
8th grade MVP. So, I mean, I know you guys already ate the main course. It was excellent. That's good. I hope so, because it's been on the menu for 4 years, so I hope it was excellent. Good. That's good. We're going to wind down into our dessert course. I think there's no more questions. Nick, do you have any questions?
I mean, I think this is where we attempt something like a wind down.
That's nuts. Let me tell you, this has been the most absolutely pan con podcast thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
We had a big political debate in the middle at around course 3, which was great, and I think it was very needed. Everyone's full and full of alcohol, which is also very pan con podcast like.
Yeah. It's going to be a nightmare to edit.
And then we're going to smoke some Aganorsa cigars right after.
Yeah.
Which I think pairs with our dessert very, very well.
It does.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people about the dessert before we do the
Okay, I'll talk about the dessert if Matt and Falco ever shut up. You guys were the kids in class, right? That never shut the fuck up? That were in the back corner? That was definitely you. Falco, you too? Yeah. Whatever, you guys can go fuck yourselves. So the dessert is actually the only dessert I've ever been responsible for. Not ever, but that's still on the menu. When I opened 6 years ago, I said I would never put a flan on the menu because it was kind of like a layup. It was like, shut up, Carluba. And so then after about a year in, my pastry chef left. She who must not be named. And I was forced to come up with all the desserts and whatever. It was fine.
Here comes the flan.
Yeah. So here comes the flan. Yeah. Shut up. So I visited San Francisco, I'd say like 9 years ago for the first time. And a friend of mine introduced me to candy cap mushrooms, which I never had heard about.
You smoke them?
I did not smoke them. I did not drink them in a tea either. And I actually ate them in an ice cream sandwich. And I was like, this is fucking delicious. What is this? And he was like, it's a mushroom. And I'm like, wild. So then I always thought, what would be the easiest way to implement this into my food? So when she left, I was like, all right, so now I got to come up with some fucking desserts.
Where'd she go? Dallas?
Oh, I don't want to talk about where she went. I won't go there. She's great. We've mended our ways. She's amazing. So I came no Salt Bay restaurant. So I came up with the candy cap mushroom flan, which reminded me of coffee with a sambuca crema and coffee crumble on top. And it all like really worked out incredibly well. People loved it. And that's why since our new corporate pastry chef, David Verjano, has joined the team, this is the only dessert I am responsible for that has stayed on the menu for now 5 years. So if it sucks, keep it to yourself. If you love it, tell me all about it. And I think it goes very well with cigars and all the Negronis that I'm drinking.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So in the spirit of the wind down, we always end with... Yeah,
time out. Do you want to give Todd his opportunity? Because, Todd, we've skipped you twice. I feel so bad. Last time... Hey, Todd. All right. Yeah. Last time Todd was involved with a podcast, me and Falco almost fell out of here.
That's the plan.
That's all right. Good. Great.
So
executed.
I've been waiting for 10 years for somebody to tell me what the fuck a natural wine is. I still don't know.
It's a fad. That's what it is.
But this is technically, quote unquote, a natural wine. It's a Lambrusco. Typically, Lambrusco looks like the last wine you had, very dark in color. This is rosé. It's made in the same fashion. That's the secondary fermentation is inside the bottle, where the bubbles come from. Really clean, really crisp. Just a bright, nice way. After a big meal, I don't want to end with like dessert wine that's like super heavy and like honeyed. Like I think this is just a nice way to kind of cut through the flan, and I think it has some earthy properties to go with the candy cap mushroom. So
great.
Cheers.
Todd. All right, everybody. Todd. Nice.
Todd.
Woo!
Go Todd.
So normally our wind down involves all the recommendation things, but we've covered so much ground here. You tell me. Do either of you have? Normally, would end with parting recommendations, where you'd recommend a thing to the audience. In this case, some of our audience is here in person.
All 22 of them.
All 12. Not even.
Yeah.
Not even
13 of the 22 are here.
We have do you have anything that you would recommend to the people who are here with us in the flesh, or the people who are listening or watching? It could be absolutely anything. It could be a song, a movie, a book, a travel destination, a meal, whatever it might be. That's usually how we wrap up. What would you recommend to people?
I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously I've been in the process of building and opening jugs, and what's gotten me through a lot of that is Derek's empanadas and pot pies. Thankfully for that, I can walk across the street and eat, and then come back and continue to yell at general contractors for not doing their job right. As everyone in here would probably be like, yeah, that's pretty normal. So that's my parting recommendation.
Norman, any parting recommendation for the people?
You guys are getting some goodie bags, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
this is part party recommendation, part shameless plug. I like
Love that. That's good. That's a double entendre.
Well, my recommendation has to do with what's in. I don't know what's all in the bag, but there's two.
Only two things matter.
Okay.
No, that's not true.
I've partnered up with some nice young men that are helping me make some of my signature sauces. One's a mango moho, which Michael simply.
I've made that so many times.
Many times. They're both in the same size jar. The other one is called rum and pepper paint.
Oh, also made that several times, yeah.
They are very different in terms of how much you would use. So my recommendation is, I don't know, maybe Google, me somewhere, because I don't have a little like stick that you can watch a video of me showing how I make the paint, how I use the paint. But when you open up the paint and taste it, you're going to taste like something that tastes as strong as, let's say, a sweet soy sauce. So you have to use this very judiciously. What we do, the most typical way that we use it is we brush it onto a fillet of fish on one side, just enough to coat it, and actually put the fish on the plate, paint it, come back another 2 minutes, paint it, maybe one more time, paint it only on one side. Then you sear that fish, and it won't take much of that. But then, let's say it could be anything. It could be snapper, it could be grouper, whatever. It's it's very adaptable to that. But then you sear it on that one side, stick it in the oven until the fish is done, pull it out, put the mango sauce at room temperature on a plate, and then you have a dish that was one of the signature dishes of all time for Normans. So you're going to have those two different sauces in your bag. So my recommendation is go easy on the pepper paint, not so easy on the mango mojo.
Who's going to make the stuffed poblano?
Frankie.
I would add to that as recommendations for the rum and pepper paint is to braise pork belly, paint it on the rum and pepper, put it on the rum and pepper paint, put it on the pork belly, put it on the grill, and eat it.
Right. I think you guys are gonna find ways that I haven't done it with it, because I was sort of locked into that fish dish because it was what we did. But anyway, I
remember watching that station.
The people who are making them, Kira Market, they're nice young folks, and they are. You guys might go, you know what? I want to do my own line of sauces, or my own, even one sauce. Just do one sauce. They can potentially make sauce for you like they're making for me, and you don't have to have them be in grocery stores. You can have individual fulfillments. You can have 100 customers, and that's enough for them. So it's kind of cool.
The first time I made rum and pepper paint, I was scared for my life.
Why?
Because you were sitting at the pass, and then this gigantic flame started at 180. And I was like, what the fuck do I do now? And I just grabbed the hotel pan, and I was like,
boom. Smart.
Yeah.
See, that's why he's here today.
act quickly. That's all you could do.
Self-preservation.
Yeah, that was it.
So I think with that, the flan is in front of everybody. I think that we'd like to transition into our no microphones lives.
Now we can tell it like it
mid
really is.
flan, and honestly, I'm a little shocked at how quiet this room has been considering the guest list. There's a lot of people here who I'm commending you for your like self-control here. We're going to turn off the mic in a second. I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank the sponsors
these guys.
of this event. So we're going to thank all the people. We're going to thank Courvoisier and Pellegrino and Acqua Panna and Aganorsa and D'Artagnan. We're going to thank also Cura Market, who are the people responsible for the Norman's 2 products where you get in your goodie bags. I'm only shouting them out despite their not having cut a check because of the Norman connection and the Belen connection. One of their co-founders.
And rearing that dirty head.
And also, as long as we're talking about goodie bags and things, there is another person in this room who is responsible for one of the things in your goodie bags. Carolina Quijano worked with Courvoisier to do some Courvoisier-infused chocolates.
My neighbor.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know if you mean just your table neighbor or what. I don't know if that means you get an extra chocolate.
My neighbor.
So, and also, again, shout out to Aganorsa. We are about to go and light up some Aganorsa cigars.
I can't wait.
With a couple of cocktails that will involve Courvoisier and San Pellegrino Oakwood. I have never had San Pellegrino Oakwood. I'm not 100% sure what that even means, that bubbly water would taste woody, and I'm super interested to find out.
Woody Bubbles.
There. Woody Bubbles.
Woody Bubbles.
That sounds like the best nickname anybody could have.
Peace out, people.
Peace out. Thank you very much. Enjoy your flan.
All right.
That's it. It's over. We're done.
Big credit to Matt and Falco for not fucking this whole thing up. Nice work. Yeah.
Thank you for organizing this.
Oh, I turned the mic off already.
All right. No. Fuck that guy.
And I'm sorry because I'm too many. I really do. This is a sincere thing. I'm trying to make back on for this. I want to thank not just Mike, who I thanked publicly, and he gave me shit for saying nice things about him, so I won't keep talking about him.
Following you.
But the rest of who's finally following me on Instagram.
Finally following you. It's because he went to Berlin.
No, but really, aside from Mike, who I have said plenty of nice things about, I want to thank all of the Ariete people. Many of them are not here, but I hope that they hear this at some point. If for no other reason, then I think if you tallied up the retail value of all of the alcohol I've been served while recording podcasts, it's more than any of the ad revenue Mike has seen from this podcast.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So thanks to the Ariete people for not only more than 2 years of putting up with this weird thing we do, but also for putting this thing together that certainly I had very little to do with organizing. This was an Ariete experience you had, and Pancon Podcast was kind of like infiltrating.
What an incredible meal! What an incredible night!
I was going to say one thing. Actually, Brittany and Todd, they did it all.
There you go.
Yes. Actually, thinking about this earlier, I was like, holy shit, what an incredible time. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, there's no dollar amount that I would not that I'm super wealthy, but I'm saying there's no dollar amount that would not pay for a meal like this. This is incredible. Like, thank you guys. Absolutely. This was absolutely incredible. I mean, from the food, from A to Z, from chef, like doing this, like, dude, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
We're out.
Thank you.